Rachel Zegler just lived through every Hollywood actor's worst nightmare. Imagine sitting in a nearly empty movie theater watching your own big-budget film completely bomb in real time. Not even discounted tickets could lure in an audience. This wasn't just a flop for the woke Snow White remake, it was a cinematic black hole vanishing so completely that Zegler, all of 23 years old and a handful of die-hard friends seemed like the only souls brave enough to witness the wreckage firsthand. For an actress once hyped as Hollywood's next sensation, this was a brutal public smack of reality. The box office numbers were in, and the message was deafeningly clear. Nobody cared.
Please?
For which movie?
The date, March 25th, 2025. The mission to salvage some shred of dignity from a cinematic shipwreck. Rachel Zegler, the face of Woe Snow White, bravely or perhaps desperately marshaled her closest circle, Ela Mason, Jorge Mason Remy, and Maria Isabel Demison, for a viewing. But instead of a premiere, they walked into what felt like a movie theater in a ghost town. And thanks to the unfiltered lens of Ila's Instagram stories, the internet became an unwilling audience to the unfolding awkwardness. Imagine the scene in a cavernous theater echoing with emptiness. Ila's enthusiastic shriek of Zegler as her name blazed across the screen met with a strained, self-deprecating laugh and a lone forced cheer from Rachel herself. The silence that followed must have been deafening. Did they rent out the entire auditorium in a surreal act of damage control, or was the stark emptiness simply the default setting for Snow White screenings? We can only speculate, yet with the resilience of true friends, the group attempted to inject some manufactured merriment into the desolate occasion. They even stumbled into a viral trend, approaching a lone, impeccably dressed theater employee with a forced casualness. "2 tickets, please." The employee, bless his innocent soul, politely asked, "For which movie?" The camera swung to the group, revealing their props, gaudy Snow White popcorn buckets and souvenir cups, held with a look of bewildered disbelief. "Please, for which movie?" As if the universe was determined to amplify the irony, Zegler clutched a bouquet of flowers, a clear symbol of sympathy, likely a well-meaning if slightly pathetic gesture from her companions, because the only bouquets the box office was handing out were made of thorns. Rachel may have donned the iconic dress of Snow White, but it seemed the only thing this movie was destined to kiss was the cold, unforgiving concrete of rock bottom. And this public display of quiet desperation was merely a prelude, a soft opening act to the real horror show about to unfold. The brutal unveiling of the box office numbers.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
The financial post-mortem of Woe Snow White reads like a Hollywood producer's worst nightmare. A paltry $3.5 million trickled in during Thursday previews, followed by a truly dismal $43 million opening weekend. Let's be clear, Disney's Woe Snow White wasn't just a flop, it was an unmitigated, spectacularly expensive catastrophe. To truly grasp the scale of this disaster, consider the comparisons. The Little Mermaid remake, despite its own controversies, swam to a $95 million debut, more than double Snow White's anemic numbers. Even the much-maligned Dumbo remake, often cited as a Disney misstep, managed to haul in roughly the same opening weekend revenue, yet on a significantly leaner budget. Speaking of budgets, Snow White reportedly devoured over $250 million before a single dollar was spent on marketing. Now, in an era where movie theaters often resemble echoing caverns, critics descended like vultures circling the carcass of Disney's latest misadventure. Social media became a digital gallery of failure, plastered with seating charts depicting vast oceans of unsold seats and lonely snapshots of isolated audience members adrift in deserted rows. And because the internet thrives on schadenfreude, the jokes began to rain down. Tongue-in-cheek GoFundMe campaigns sprung up, facetiously soliciting donations to help Disney, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, somehow break even on their epic box office bomb. But the public flogging was far from over. The real online roasting was just igniting, fueled by the resurfacing of an old video clip of Rachel Zegler, a clip that would return to haunt her in the most spectacularly public way.
This is really a bad movie, and I apologize to Walt Disney himself. I'm sorry.
Before the Snow White storm clouds gathered, before the box office numbers crashed like a fairy tale castle in ruins, Rachel Zegler, brimming with youthful confidence, made a bold declaration. She proclaimed with unwavering certainty that audiences would eagerly wait in line to experience her films. This pronouncement, unearthed from the digital archives, now served as a cruel and ironic counterpoint to the desolate reality of empty theaters. In the viral clip, a young Zegler, radiating self-assurance, asserted that despite her flaws and cracks, she held the unwavering hope that people would indeed wait in line to see her work. Fast forward to the harsh glare of 2025, and the only queue forming was online, a digital mob of internet users sharpening their virtual pitchforks, eager to dissect and devour the Snow White debacle. Movie theaters across the nation stood as monuments to cinematic failure, deserted and echoing. Ticket sales plummeted to tragic depths, and film critics, sensing blood in the water, wasted no time in launching their scathing critiques. One particularly brutal online commentator succinctly summarized the public sentiment: "Welcome back to reality, princess. Snow White was a complete flop." Adding fuel to the already raging fire, conservative commentator Ian Miles Chong amplified the clip's reach, reposting it on X and driving home the devastating truth. Snow White had officially claimed the ignominious title of Disney's lowest-performing live-action remake in decades. The internet's judgment was swift, merciless, and delivered with the cutting precision of a digital guillotine. But even this public drubbing paled in comparison to the behind-the-scenes turmoil, the explosive conflicts brewing beneath the glossy surface of the Snow White production, especially concerning Zegler's increasingly strained relationship with her co-star.
Behind the scenes, you guys know as well as I do that those executives like Spielberg are looking at that, saying, Rachel Zegler can F right off.
A journalistic grenade, detonated by a bombshell report from Variety, ripped away the carefully constructed facade of Disney magic, exposing the chaotic reality simmering beneath the surface of their latest fairy tale fiasco. And at the epicenter of this behind-the-scenes earthquake, Rachel Zegler. According to anonymous sources, deeply embedded within the Disney machine, studio executives had already been wringing their hands over Zegler's increasingly unfiltered off-script comments, particularly her dismissive remarks about the original Snow White. Yet in a baffling display of corporate inertia, instead of reining her in, Disney chose a path of passive silence, hoping the brewing storm would somehow dissipate. Then the dam burst. Zegler took to the stage at Disney's D23 event, initially radiating practiced charm and gratitude. But in a moment of breathtaking audacity, she detonated a PR bomb, concluding her seemingly innocuous speech with a jarringly bold and utterly unexpected political statement. Panic instantly seized the Magic Kingdom. Disney executives, masters of manufactured smiles and meticulously crafted narratives, were reportedly shook. Their meticulously budgeted $270 million fairy tale project had suddenly veered wildly off course, spiraling headfirst into the treacherous territory of political controversy. Damage control, frantic and desperate, became the studio's absolute overriding priority, and the simmering discontent wasn't confined to the executive suites. Whispers of fury and frustration began to emanate from within the Snow White production family itself, signaling a deeper fracturing than anyone publicly acknowledged.
Zegler also faced blowback after posting Free Palestine. The note is from Israel and served in the Israeli army.
The internal fissures within the Snow White camp widened into a gaping chasm when Jonah Platt, son of the film's producer, Mark Platt, entered the fray, wielding the digital weapon of social media shade. In a now deleted Instagram comment that nonetheless echoed throughout Hollywood, Jonah Platt unleashed a scathing public indictment of Rachel Zegler, holding her squarely responsible for the movie's catastrophic box office performance, and by all accounts, he minced no words. Industry publications like Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, and People magazine all corroborated the explosive claims. Jonah Platt reportedly spilled the tea, revealing that his own father, producer Mark Platt, had felt compelled to personally board a plane and fly across the country to directly and presumably sternly reprimand Zegler. The offense? Her perceived decision to inject her personal political views directly into the film's carefully orchestrated promotional campaign. This is called adult responsibility and accountability, Jonah Platt reportedly wrote before delivering the ultimate brutal assessment. Her behavior, he asserted, had demonstrably damaged the film's chances of success. Ouch. The sting of that public rebuke must have been particularly sharp, coming from within the very heart of the Snow White production team. Even though Mark Platt himself had intervened, flying to New York to implore Zegler to dial down the controversy, she apparently remained defiant, at least initially, as the inflammatory Instagram post lingered online for a considerable period. But this intra-family drama, as explosive as it was, paled in comparison to the steadily escalating tension brewing between Zegler and her on-screen adversary, the Queen herself.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
The on-screen dynamic between Snow White and the Evil Queen is traditionally one of stark contrast, but the off-screen relationship between Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, the actresses embodying these iconic roles, devolved into something far more complex and decidedly less fairy tale-like. Insiders initially painted a picture of professional camaraderie during filming, suggesting an atmosphere of mutual respect and even warmth. However, as the film's release date loomed, the atmosphere reportedly chilled rapidly, morphing into something decidedly awkward and strained, and the tension didn't simply dissipate after the camera stopped rolling. Following a visibly uncomfortable joint appearance at the 2025 Oscars, Zegler appeared to escalate the simmering conflict, unleashing what many observers interpreted as a thinly veiled, undeniably barbed jab at Gadot. In a seemingly innocuous Instagram reply, Zegler casually referred to Gadot as a professional pageant queen. The internet, ever vigilant for celebrity shade, immediately flagged the comment as dripping with sarcasm and dismissiveness. Even Disney insiders reportedly acknowledged the comment's passive-aggressive undertones, recognizing it as a slight against a fellow actress. But the roots of this icy interpersonal climate ran far deeper than mere Hollywood rivalry. Zegler and Gadot found themselves entrenched on opposing sides of a deeply divisive and intensely charged political issue. Zegler faced a torrent of criticism after publicly posting messages of support for Free Palestine. Gadot, hailing from Israel and having served in the Israeli army, became an immediate target of intense online backlash, and even credible threats to her personal safety, stemming directly from Zegler's politically charged posts. The situation deteriorated to such an alarming degree that Disney, a corporation not unaccustomed to crisis management, was forced to allocate significant funds for enhanced security measures to protect Gadot, a mother of 4. According to one insider, Zegler didn't understand the repercussions of her actions for the film, for Gal, for anyone. And as if this toxic interpersonal drama wasn't enough to poison the well, a barrage of pre-release controversies was already gathering force, threatening to sink Snow White before it even had a chance to float.
You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that fucking backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the are you doing, man?
You're replacing jobs that people could have as little people. Snow White and the 7 dwarfs, it's 4 dwarfs, you know?
From the very moment Disney announced Rachel Zegler's casting as their new Snow White, the internet erupted in a cacophony of dissent. Certain corners of the online world voiced outrage, taking umbrage with the selection of a Latina actress to portray a character traditionally depicted as having skin as white as snow. The backlash echoed the racially charged vitriol directed at Halle Bailey's casting as Ariel in The Little Mermaid. Zegler, however, chose not to remain silent, opting instead to engage directly with her online detractors. In a now-deleted social media post that nonetheless circulated widely, she fired back at the chorus of outraged keyboard warriors. "Yes, I am Snow White. No, I am not bleaching my skin for the role," she declared, as reported by the Wall Street Journal. She went even further, branding her critics as losers obsessed with maintaining the bloodline purity of a cartoon princess. This combative response, while perhaps cathartic, did little to quell the brewing storm. In a subsequent 2022 Variety interview alongside Andrew Garfield, Zegler acknowledged the intense frenzy surrounding her casting, conceding that she had become a trending topic but attributing it to the actions of angry people. However, while controversy can occasionally serve as a perverse form of marketing, generating buzz and piquing curiosity, Snow White was not benefiting from this kind of dubious magic. Zegler's Snow White project seemed to be perpetually fighting an uphill battle, facing headwinds from the very outset, and her own increasingly candid, often dismissive comments about the source material only served to exacerbate the already negative sentiment. In a 2022 interview with Extra, Zegler ignited further controversy when she casually dismissed the original 1937 Snow White storyline as weird. "There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird," she stated, referencing Prince Charming's iconic, if somewhat antiquated, romantic pursuit. Disney had publicly signaled their intention to modernize the Snow White narrative, but Zegler's phrasing came across as outright disdain for the beloved romance that anchored the original film. What truly ignited the online tinderbox, however, was her assertion that they were adopting a fundamentally different approach to the story. Critics accused her of actively undermining the very cinematic legacy she was tasked with revitalizing, arguing that Snow White, Disney's groundbreaking first full-length animated feature, held its classic status for valid reasons. "If you hate the story so much, why take the role?" one disgruntled fan queried on X, encapsulating the growing public skepticism. And just when it seemed the Snow White controversy couldn't deepen further, another layer of contentious debate emerged, extending far beyond Zegler's casting choices. Peter Dinklage, the acclaimed star of Game of Thrones, entered the fray, unleashing a pointed critique of the film's handling of the Seven Dwarfs. During a 2022 episode of Mark Maron's WTF podcast, Dinklage didn't mince words. He decried what he perceived as Disney's hypocrisy, patting themselves on the back for progressive casting in one area while simultaneously perpetuating what he deemed an outdated and stereotypical portrayal of dwarfism. "You're progressive in one way, and then you're still making that backward story about 7 dwarfs living in a cave. What the dumbman are you doing, man?" he questioned, his frustration palpable. His blunt criticism detonated a firestorm of online debate. Vern Troyer's brother added his voice to the chorus, arguing that Disney was replacing jobs that people could have as little people. The online discourse raged, dissecting issues of representation, historical context, and the very essence of the Snow White narrative. Disney, acutely aware of the escalating PR nightmare, scrambled to respond. The very next day, the studio issued a public statement hastily announcing that they were indeed taking a different approach to the depiction of the 7 dwarfs and had been in consultation with members of the dwarfism community. This different approach ultimately translated into the complete abandonment of the classic 7 dwarfs as they were traditionally known, and their replacements? CGI dwarfs. The reaction was swift and overwhelmingly negative. Fans recoiled at the first glimpses of Disney's digitally rendered dwarfs, finding them unsettling and devoid of the charm and expressiveness of their animated predecessors. Instead of heartwarming and whimsical, these digital creations appeared stiff, unnatural, and to many, simply weird. Facing this relentless barrage of negativity, Disney knew they had a full-blown crisis on their hands, and their carefully calibrated premiere strategy would reveal just how desperately they sought to bury this increasingly toxic project.
Putting out a statement saying they were taking a different approach to the 7 dwarfs and had been consulting with members of the dwarfism community.
That is totally uplifting and the right way to be woke, Link, when you actually canceled the roles for the marginalized population because just putting them on screen is somehow racist.
The PR nightmare surrounding the Snow White remake continues to unfold, leaving industry insiders and casual observers alike to dissect the wreckage and ponder the lessons learned. What missteps led to this spectacular cinematic and commercial failure? Was it a confluence of casting controversies, tone-deaf promotional messaging, a fundamental misreading of the audience's desires, or a combination of all of the above? Let us know in the comments below what you think went wrong with the Snow White PR disaster and box office bomb. And if you're hungry for more behind-the-scenes Hollywood drama and breakdowns of cinematic train wrecks, then be sure to click on the next video that you need to watch. We're diving even deeper into the world of fairy tale failures and studio miscalculations.